Hi, this is Jen Rubin and the Contrarian. It's my great pleasure on this auspicious occasion, not necessarily a happy one, to have my friend and one of the great historians of our time, Ruth Ben-Ghiat. Ruth is famous for her analysis of the strongmen and of her work in particular, in Italian authoritarianism, but really the entire global and historical phenomenon. Welcome to the Contrarian, Ruth. I'm so glad you could be with us. And you are a contributor, a founding contributor.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's a difficult day, but it's a historic day. And so this conversation is important.
It absolutely is. When authoritarians take power, even through election, what are the things that you normally see, and what do you see playing out in the short run and maybe in the long run with Donald Trump?
So often authoritarians tell us what they're going to do ahead of time. And unless it's a true old-fashioned coup. And they do this because they want us to feel powerless and hopeless, and as though nothing can stop their plans. And authoritarians, many of them are also showmen. Mussolini was a journalist, Mobutu was a journalist, and Donald Trump, of course, is a man of spectacle. And so they will do things that will get a lot of attention, showy things that will inflate their personality cults. And if we look throughout history at these kind of shock events, which again can happen through a coup or they can happen through an election, you see three things that recur in the history of right-wing authoritarians in particular, but many of them are cross political spectrum. You see purges, you see privatizations, and you see pardons. And so when Mussolini took power, he declared he had been almost like Trump's first term. He had been, a prime minister in a democracy, and then he declared dictatorship. And many of the laws he passed resemble those of Project 2025. So he purged non-political civil servants, anybody who wasn't going to be a loyalist. And again, he had rehearsed this harassment during his time before he was a dictator. He pardoned all, quote, political criminals. And these were the thugs, the black shirts who helped him get to power. They were violent and corrupt individuals. And he had a mass pardon for them. And many of those people made careers in the bureaucracy of the party or the state, and they even became ministers. And then he had already done privatizations for the telecommunications and the insurance industry. And the point of that is to buy off the big capital and get their allegiance to him. And so we see these things repeating in the plans of Donald Trump right now.
Absolutely. It's almost eerie. Nothing new under the sun, I guess. It's interesting when you talk about the release of potentially violent people or people who are even convicted in a violent incident or a violent act. Part of what authoritarians do is they utilize violence, not necessarily state controlled violence, but violence of their followers out there
Mm-hmm.
to harass their enemies. Talk to us a little bit about this and the role of these militia groups or individuals who now are completely beholden to Donald Trump because of whatever benefits he's given and because he celebrated them as heroes. They're patriotic champions as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, so the principle behind this is authoritarianism is always involves some degree of conversion of the rule of law into rule by the lawless. That can include physical violence, it can include intimidation or corruption, anything that degrades rule of law and the integrity and dignity of the individual. And we can look back now at all of the really intensive efforts by Trump and company to dehumanize their targets, culminating in that hate fest at Madison Square Garden, the last big rally. So this kind of what is most worrying is eventually there's some kind of fusion between official security forces of a state and paramilitaries or other armed groups. And this across the political spectrum. So in Venezuela, for example, Maduro, who of course lost the election but is staying there anyway, another self-coup, he has used these, they're called colectivos, these armed gangs. And they work in conjunction, although always unofficially, with the military, with paramilitaries. So you see this in many, many circumstances. And what's happened, of course, here is since 2016, Donald Trump has been signaling, and not so subtly, to all the various armed groups or hate groups that we have, from Proud Boys to militias, who are now supposed to be, quote, assisting with mass deportations. That's a classic example of the beginning of a fusion. And one of the reasons a hothead with white supremacist tattoos is the preferred head of Secretary of Defense, in my view, having studied these things, military coups, etc., abuses of the military, is that he is the person most likely to be a bridge between the official military and these other kinds of armed formations. So I'm very worried about that in particular.
That is a stunning insight that I don't think anyone has raised. It's not coincidental that this guy who literally is tattooed with these white Christian nationalist symbols is now going to be, presumably, if the Senate confirms. I want to talk a little bit about corruption. That is also one of these telltale signs. Donald Trump has started a new crypto business to immediately enrich himself. And he is continuing full throttle with all of his businesses. So now the Saudis, as someone put it, don't pretend to have to check into the hotel that Donald Trump owns to give him money. They can just buy his coins and funnel money. Talk to us a little bit about corruption, and not only its odiousness in really converting the public wealth into his private wealth, but what this does to the operation of government, how it deforms and contorts the way laws are executed, the way power is executed.
So we have to get into the mentality of the autocrat, which is not a pleasant place to dwell. It is unfortunately where I dwell. The purpose of government is totally different for autocrats. They have zero interest in public welfare. They actually don't care if their states become, quote, failed states with mass poverty, because the purpose of government is to create the circumstances for the leader and the cronies, who include the cabinet, but also people, and here we have Elon Musk, there's hangers-on, people who are really exerting power, but they're not official. And the purpose is for all these people to enrich themselves and to make the circumstances for big capital in all of its different formations to be able to operate without checks and regulations. And that's where privatizations come in. And so the idea of conflicts of interest is a democratic notion. It's a democratic value that someone holding public office should not be profiting, and that would be a conflict of interest, so you'd have to divest. That's not how autocrats think. The whole purpose of capturing the government, this is autocratic capture, is to be able to enrich yourself without being beholden or accountable to such notions of quaint democratic notions of transparency, accountability, or conflict of interest. So we have to get in their heads. They really see, and I'm including here billionaires, these people are incredibly arrogant, and they truly see government as a bother, as something that they should be able to use for their benefit and not be beholden to, because they have the right to enrich themselves in any way possible. That's what's happened in Hungary. The poster boy Orban for the GOP. Hungary was ranked the most corrupt country in the EU last year because of this mentality.
Fascinating. As we reach the end of our time, I want to ask you what is on many of our contrarian community members' minds, and that is, how does one respond to this? What do you do if you're a private citizen, or frankly, if you're a government worker in one of these departments that is now being run by someone who has declared opposition to the mission of the agency? What are the kinds of things one can do in the face of all this?
So for civil servants, there's a tradition also in history of and contemporary of trying to obstruct from within, of kind of refusing to pass on paperwork, of slowing down. These are also techniques of resistance that have been used by workers in factories: slowdowns, sabotages, obstructionism. Those are things that people can do, but it becomes difficult in a situation of creeping autocracy where there are purges of those people. And that's what Project 2025, which has been like a shadow government, has been working to have this vetted. They call them an army. So it's not clear how long anybody would last who is indeed not with the program. Now, for ordinary citizens, I really feel, because I know so well the devastation that comes from internalizing the authoritarian injunction that you are powerless. It's basically, I am all, I am everything, and you are nothing. That's the Trump and fellow autocrat ethos that we can see day one. We're using their language way too much. But this is day one. And for Trump, it's day one. I am a dictator, drill, baby, drill. But it's also day one of our fight to save our democracy, because as of noon, we are the political opposition. And as in Hungary, as in Venezuela, as in all countries at various stages of losing their democracy. So we are the opposition. And so we are placed in an official position of fighting to save our democracy. That's our day one. So I'm preferring to think of it that way. And having that mentality is like a precondition for all the other actions that we can take.
And in the days and weeks ahead, give us just two or three concrete things that people can do or think about in order to begin this long journey, because it is a long journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint, that they could do in their private lives or in their professional lives. What are a few key things that members of the resistance do in their ordinary lives?
I think that we've been able to take our democracy for granted, many of us, and just as we take our vitamins in the morning, just as we try and take care of our bodies, or call our loved ones, we can do something every day for democracy. Now, that might mean, for example, you're going to see local and state level leaders resisting the administration's actions. It's really important to reach out to those people. We might see contacting your representatives as old-fashioned, but they need to hear that their actions are supportive, because it's too easy to just focus on the villains and denounce, in fact, in a wasteful way for our energies on social media. That doesn't matter. It matters to contact the people who are standing up for what's right and tell them that you are behind them, because they don't really hear from people enough and they're out there. So that's one thing that we can do. The other is educating people. That's what I know you and I try to do in our own way. Educating people about the realities of what's going on, the big picture. Why is Elon Musk there? The contradictions between this fake populism, Trump, the man of the people. They all do this, all autocrats. Mr. Chainsaw in Argentina, I am the man of the people. Well, he was an advisor to the biggest billionaire in Argentina. That was his job. So we can point out these contradictions. And sometimes people will not want to listen, especially if they're brainwashed by Fox. But we can have these conversations. That's something we can do to people we know. We can do it with people we don't know. As Asha Rangappa, our fellow contributor and friend, says, you can talk to a stranger every day. You can just, not even about politics, you can make contact and eye contact with a stranger and start this kind of reinforcement of civil society. Those are things that we can do.
That is fabulous, Ruth. Thank you. And I think what I take away from this, and you just really turned a light on, is that we are now in the opposition. And in that,
Yes.
there is great pride and great responsibility. We join other people around the world who are in the opposition. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but eventually we can triumph. And we have to do this as a community. We have to do this without besetting one another with complaints and bickering and small differences of ideological opinion. We really are, as our fellow contrarian says, Joyce Vance, all in this together. So thank you so much for joining us. And more importantly, thank you for becoming part of the contrarian family. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you many, many times as we fight this, I think, valiant battle. So thanks so much.
Thank you.